A few questions which have actually been taken from previous 212 exams, 214, not 212. So, the first question, endocrine glands are typically avascular, ductless, square, autonomous, or confined to mesoderm. What's the answer? A, B, C, A, E. Which one?
Is it B? I think
No?
Ductless?
Ductless. That's a characteristic of endocrine glands. Internal secretion differentiates them from exocrine glands. So that was easy. Second one. Hormones, biologically inert by themselves, used as energy sources, incorporated into other molecules, always stored in secretory granules, or always released by excitosis. What's the answer? Always released by excitosis. No? Protein hormones, A, biologically inert by themselves, correct. Hormones have no effect in the absence of a receptor. You must have a receptor to have hormone action. Okay, next one. Binding proteins do not bind protein hormones, do not bind steroid hormones, do not bind thyroid hormones. Hormones do not, so binding proteins do not prevent hormone degradation or mediate hormonal action. A, B, C, D, E. Which one?
A.
Like a good Canadian, A. Binding proteins do not bind protein hormones. No. Binding quite well then. Some protein hormones do bind to binding proteins. Now, if they bind to binding proteins, protein hormones are not doing this to increase their solubility. They're soluble in blood. Steroid hormones, some other hormones need to bind to protein hormones to make them soluble, but this is not the case for protein hormones. So what's the answer? You've got a choice now.
C.
B?
C.
C, do not bind thyroid hormones. Yes, they do.
They don't mediate hormonal action.
Yes, correct. Binding of a hormone to a binding protein has no biological effect. So that one's the right answer is E. Final one. The actions of protein hormones usually mediated by cytoplasmic receptors, by nuclear receptors, by cyclic ribosomal adenosine phosphate, by second messengers, or by endocytotic vesicles. A, B, C, D, E. D, by second messengers. Correct. So C is wrong because that's just crap.
This is correct.
That was to catch some of you out. All right. So these again were taken from previous exams, so that's what you should expect. All right, what I want to talk about today is an endocrine system called the neural hypothesis. And in this lecture, the format that I'll use is the same for all of the other lectures. I'll talk about the structure and location of each endocrine gland, its secretions, the actions of the hormones released, the regulation of hormone secretion, and then a few deficiency syndromes. So if we're talking about the neurohypothesis, we're talking about this region here on the ventral surface of the brain. This region here at the bottom of the brain is called the hypothalamus, which is a number of nuclei that you can see here that are very important in neural integration. They take a lot of information about the internal and external environment and convert this into an endocrine response through the pituitary gland, which lies just below it. Now, the pituitary gland is an unusual gland because, as you can see, it has two lobes. And these are two entirely different glands. One gland, the posterior pituitary, is a downgrowth from the brain and is entirely neural. This other tissue in pink is non-neural and is actually derived from the roof of the mouth. And this is shown here in embryonic development. You have this downgrowth of neural tissue from the brain. It moves downwards and eventually meets an upgrowth which forms from the roof of the mouth. This is called Rathke's pouch. And Rathke's pouch becomes pinched off and will eventually fuse with the downgrowth which forms the posterior pituitary. Rathke's pouch gives rise to the anterior pituitary. Where these two lobes meet, there is a third lobe in most species called the intermediate lobe, but in humans, this lobe is lost just prior to birth, and all that remains is this cleft, either side of which there are a few intermediate lobe cells. So we don't consider the third lobe in human physiology. The neurohypothesis itself is really part of the hypothalamus, the neural stalk, which gives rise to the bulbous posterior pituitary. So this is entirely neural tissue, and you can see that these large cell bodies, they're called magnocellular nuclei, which are present in these two hypothalamic nuclei, the paraventricular nucleus and the supraoptic nucleus. They have large cell bodies and they have large axons which run all the way through the pituitary stalk and terminate in the posterior lobe on blood vessels which actually run into the jugular vein. And these neurons release their secretions into blood, so these are neuroendocrines. And the secretions that they release are called vasopressin and oxytocin. So this is actually an unusual endocrine system because these endocrines are made here in the nuclei, but they're released here in the posterior pituitary. So there are two hormones being produced, vasopressin, which is sometimes called antidiuretic hormone, ADH, and this is mainly made in the supraoptic nuclei, the SON, and oxytocin, which is mainly made in the paraventricular nucleus, the PVN. Now, only one hormone, whether it's vasopressin or oxytocin, is released by any one neuron. But most vasopressin, 5/6 of the vasopressin is made in the SON, 5/6 of the oxytocin is made in the PDN. Now, these are protein hormones, and like all protein hormones, they're made as a result of gene transcription and mRNA translation, and they're packaged into secretory vesicles. Now, as many protein hormones, the first hormone moieties produced are called prohormones, or prehormones, which are biologically inactive and consist of other sequences attached to them. Now, in the case of these hormones, they're made in the large microcellular cell bodies. They're packaged in the Golgi, secretory granules, and these granules move down the axons and are stored near the terminus, axon terminal, and then released by exocytosis upon appropriate electrical stimulation. Now, the interesting thing about these hormones is that they're nonopeptides, meaning they're made of 9 amino acids. So they're very small hormones. In fact, they're so small, they could actually escape the secretory granule. To prevent this, they bind in the secretory granule to these moieties, which are called neurophycins. So they're also in the precursor molecule. These structures are in the precursor. Their only role is to prevent leakage of the nonopeptide during intragranular transport. So they're an intraneural binding protein. At the time of release, as you can see here, the nonopeptide separates from the neurophycin. The neurophycin is biologically inactive. It allows the nonopeptide to exert its biological effect. So this is a simple schema which recaps this. Again, production occurs as a result of gene transcription and mRNA translation. So ribosomes on the ER, packaging in the Golgi, transport of the secretory vesicles all the way down these neurons. They're stored to a certain degree around the nerve terminals, and then upon electrical stimulation, they're released by cytosis. So the first hormone I want to talk about is called vasopressin, sometimes called antidiuretic hormone, ADH. Vasopressin takes its name from this action, which was found this hormone would increase blood pressure. And it increases blood pressure by acting on the smooth muscle that surrounds the blood vessel. And this was the first effect that this hormone was found to have, although it's subsequently been found to only occur at very high concentrations, such as you get during blood loss, hemorrhage. But because of this, this is or was considered a more pharmacological action than a physiological action. The antidiuretic action occurs at more physiological levels, and it's antidiuretic really because of three different roles. One, it increases the permeability of the renal collecting duct. What it does is increases the number of water channels in this duct, which will allow the reabsorption of filtered urine. It also causes vasoconstriction of the glomerulus, which reduces glomerular filtration rate. And it also, by the same action, causes the size of the glomerular cells themselves, which reduces their surface area for filtration, so less water is lost. So this action is shown schematically here. ADH, which is present in the bloodstream, will interact with this membrane receptor. It will initiate a signal transduction cascade, which in this case is cytokine P. And as a result of pKa activity, this results in increased water channels being inserted into this collecting duct membrane, which allows water to come back from filtered urine and to return to the bloodstream. And this is again shown schematically here. ADH acts as the key which opens its lock, the receptor on the membrane, which causes these water channels to be inserted into the collecting duct membrane, allows water reabsorption to occur, and this goes back into the bloodstream. As you might expect, the main stimuli that regulates this hormone are related to changes in blood volume and to changes in blood osmolality. Now, these cells themselves, the ones that make ADH, which are mainly in the superoptic, these are osmoreceptors. They will respond directly to changes in blood osmolality, particularly blood sodium, to increase ADH release. They also respond to changes in blood volume, so they respond to changes in stretch receptors, which are found in various parts of the body, including the atria. So this is shown here. The atria, as you can see here, has a volume receptor, and these receptors, volume receptors, have inhibitory activity on afferents which regulate ADH secretion, and a decrease in blood volume will decrease the stretch on these receptors, which will decrease this inhibitory afferent, meaning that you get increased ADH release. If you increase blood osmolality, this will also directly cause vasopressin release. Vasopressin will act at the kidney, and this will increase water reabsorption, increasing blood volume back to normal, and diluting blood osmolality back to normal. So these are feedback systems related to blood volume and blood osmolality. And these are shown here. In response to an increase in water, this will increase blood volume, this will increase cardiovascular stretch receptors, which will decrease ADH release. If you increase water, if you increase the amount of water you take in, this will decrease your blood osmolality. This will be sensed by osmoreceptors, which will again decrease ADH release. This will decrease the collecting ducts, which will decrease water reabsorption, increase water excretion, and this will normalize blood sodium and blood volume back to normal. And the reciprocal is also true. If you're in dehydrated conditions, this will decrease fluid volume, increase plasma osmolality, and as a result of these effects, this will increase water reabsorption and normalize blood volume and blood sodium. Now these are the main stimuli regulating ADH release. And you can see here that if you increase blood osmolality, there is this linear increase in plasma ADH levels. And I want you to note this vertical scale. These blood ADH levels go from 5, 10, 15, 20, or 25 picograms per mil in response to increases in osmolality. Now compare those blood levels with these, which are on a log scale, 1, 10, 100, and 1,000 picograms per mil. And these high levels occur in response to declining mean arterial pressure, which you would experience if you were hemorrhaging, if you were losing blood. These are the levels of ADH you would experience, and at these concentrations they have this vasopressor effect. Okay, so those were the main stimuli regulating ADH release, but there are a number of other stimuli that you should be aware of. Any physical or emotional stressor will increase ADH secretion. If you're under heat stress, you may lose water. To prevent this, heat will increase ADH and conserve water. Conversely, if you're in the cold, ADH secretion is reduced. And I'm sure many of you are aware of this. If you're in cold water, or if you're exposed to, if you're skating on the ice, you suddenly feel like you have to go to the bathroom. This is particularly true if you're swimming in cold water. How many of you scuba dive? Where do you scuba dive? In the mountains?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's cold.
Yeah.
Wetsuit or dry suit?
Wetsuit.
Right. Well, when I scuba dive, I used to scuba dive off Vancouver Island. The water there is very, very cold, and I know exactly where it's called a wetsuit. You may have also experienced this effect if you're drinking alcohol, particularly if it's a cold beer. You find that your ADH is reduced and you have to walk frequently to the bathroom. And it's not because of the volume of alcohol you're taking, it's because your ADH system has been knocked out. A little miniature of alcohol, scotch, vodka, whatever you like, one miniature is enough to completely knock out your ADH system. You may have also experienced this effect if you're having a cigarette. It may counteract the effect of alcohol. It actually has a stimulatory effect on ADH release. And you may have experienced this effect of caffeine. Caffeine also stimulates ADH release. So if you're having a coffee, you don't need to go to the bathroom. Correct? No? You need to go to the bathroom when you've had coffee? Most people do. It's quite normal. That's because caffeine has a different effect at the kidney to what it has at the hypothalamus. At the hypothalamus, it's having this stimulatory effect on ADH, antidiuretic effect. At the level of the kidney, it's acting as a diuretic. So a little summary of ADH. It's mainly made in the supraoptic nuclei, but it's released from the posterior pituitary. The main actions are to stimulate water retention. It also induces vasoconstriction. And the main stimuli promoting its release are an increase in osmolality or a decrease in blood volume. We look at pathophysiology systems. There are a number of disease states that you need to be aware of. The first is deficiency syndrome, which is called diabetes insipidus. So diabetes actually means flow, urine flow, and insipidus means it's tasteless. So in this disease, you produce a large amount of tasteless urine. So all of those that wanted to go into medicine, you would be diagnosing this, taking tasteless urine. Nowadays, you actually use glucose strips, you'd be pleased to know. Now, there are two types of diabetes insipidus. One is called hypothalamic DI, and this is when the hypothalamus is not producing ADH. There is another kind called nephrogenic DI, where the ADH is being produced, but it's not having any effects. So this is a tissue resistance syndrome where there are problems with the hormone receptor. And there are excess syndromes. One is called the syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion, SIADH. And this is when there is a problem with feedback and you have overproduction of ADH. So diabetes insipidus, the cardinal sign for this disease is polyuria. So you produce large volumes of urine. You may, in severe cases, produce up to 50 liters of urine a day. What is the normal urine production volume? How much do you produce normally? You don't know? Come on. No idea. Well, most people produce about 1 liter to 1.5 liters of urine a day. So if you're producing 10 to 50 liters of urine a day, you're going to the bathroom very, very frequently. And this is one of the problems. This is obviously debilitating. You can't do anything because you're always going to the bathroom. You can't even sleep properly because you're constantly waking up to go to the bathroom. And this is socially debilitating, but it's actually fatal if you don't have access to drinking water. So polydipsia occurs secondarily. You have to have excessive drinking of water. If you didn't, you would die. Because if you have this disease, you're unable to reduce urine flow even if you're deprived of water. So obviously this has serious consequences if you don't have access to water. The way you treat this is to give replacement therapy with exogenous ADH. If it was nephrogenic DI, you would use another antidiuretic drug. There are a number available. If it was the syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion, the problem here is excessive ADH causing excessive water retention, and this would result in a reduction in osmolality characterized by low blood sodium. And it's not just the dilutional effect of increased water retention, it's because increased blood volume would decrease aldosterone levels. I'm sure you've heard of this when you did the kidney section. Aldosterone is the main hormone responsible for sodium reabsorption. So if you have reductions of aldosterone, you have sodium excretion, which exacerbates the hyponatremia. So low blood sodium, hyponatremia, is the main problem here. Okay, the next hormone is oxytocin. Now, oxytocin, its actions in females are listed here. It's a hormone which also acts on smooth muscle, so it has roles wherever smooth muscle is found. Uterine myometrium, this is the muscular part of the uterus, and oxytocin has roles. Because of this, it has roles in parturition. It would stimulate the contraction of the uterus and would help in terms of childbirth. It would promote childbirth. In fact, you probably know that if a woman is late in terms of pregnancy term, she would be induced to have the baby, and she's given synthetic oxytocin, which is called pitocin. Another role that oxytocin has, it acts on the smooth muscle surrounding blood vessels, and this will cause it to clamp any ruptured blood vessels when the placenta separates. To prevent dangerous hemorrhage, contractions caused oxytocin will clamp these vessels and prevent hemorrhage from occurring. Continued contractions of oxytocin after childbirth will also return the uterus back to its pre-pregnancy size. And another role that oxytocin has in the uterus is actually sperm movement. It will stimulate the movement of sperm within the entire female genital tract to aid in fertilization. This is not just in the uterus, it's not just in the fallopian tubes, it's not just in the upper vagina, it's also the cervix. The cervix is the mouth to the uterus and is normally very rigid, but in the presence of oxytocin, it becomes much more pliable, and it actually moves around, and its role, oxytocin is released, as I mentioned a few moments, is released during orgasm, and the purpose for this is to have the cervix suck up any sperm that are ejaculated near the mouth of the uterus. So, I don't know if any of you have seen this. There was a nice program, I think it was on TLC. Any of you seen this? It was a fiber optic, which was, you've seen it?
Yeah.
And it's inserted through the vagina, and it's looking at the cervix and the changes in the cervix in response to orgasm. And this thing moves around, just like a vacuum hose, sucking up as much sperm as it can. So this is I would recommend you see this. Was it on TLC that you saw it?
I'm in a sexuality class here, so they showed it in class, and yeah, it dips down into the pool of sperm and stuff like
Yes,
that.
it should be on YouTube or something.
Yeah.
So I guess you're all poor students and you can't afford cable. Okay, so a number of effects in the female uterus related to uterine activity. Another role is it affects the mammary myometrium. It acts on the milk ducts, and contractions of those ducts forces milk out of the nipple into the baby. And this is called milk letdown. And oxytocin is the only hormone which has this effect. No other hormone will cause milk letdown. So these actions are shown here. Oxytocin, it will act on the uterine myometrium to cause contractions, which will allow the baby to move down, engage the cervix, and eventually be born. But you can also see here that as the baby moves around, as it starts to kick the uterus, this actually sets up a neural relay which stimulates further oxytocin production. So this is a positive feedback system. It's a neural-mediated pathway, but it's a positive feedback system. Oxytocin stimulates uterine contractions. Uterine contractions cause more oxytocin release. Now, all positive feedback systems are terminated by a catastrophic event. So, I think it's obvious what the catastrophic event is. It's what? Birth. Yes, the baby drops out and stops the uterine from contracting, which terminates this feedback pathway. This is the other effect. Oxytocin will act on the mammary glands that produce milk, cause milk letdown. You can see here, milk will then go into the baby, little Johnny here. And as the baby suckles, as he suckles the nipple, you can see that this sets off a neural relay which causes further oxytocin production. So this is a second positive feedback pathway. Oxytocin stimulates milk letdown, suckling by the baby, causes more oxytocin release to cause more milk letdown. So the catastrophic event here is what?
Stopping.
Huh?
Stopping.
Yes, little Johnny just falls off or is dragged off. And I want you to know too that this is a neural pathway, so visual stimuli is also auditory stimuli, so the sight or the sound of a baby, crying baby, would be enough to actually cause milk letdown. So you can see here, this is a milk duct, and you can see they're surrounded by myoepithelial cells. When oxytocin acts on these cells, it causes them to contract, forcing milk out through the ducts, out through the nipple. Oh yes, this was an interesting article in the Edmonton Journal a few years ago, which I thought was of interest. It was about this breastfeeding mum who saw some advice. She noticed that when she was breastfeeding her infant, I think it was actually a 2-year-old son, she felt sexually aroused. And she wanted to know if this was normal or not. She got in touch with some social workers who immediately thought she was a deviant woman, took the baby away from her for a week or so, until they were informed that this actually is absolutely normal feelings. Tactile stimulation of the breast is one of the stimuli to increase oxytocin, and oxytocin, one of the effects of oxytocin is to increase orgasm, it increases bonding, it's a normal event. So this was a very unfortunate occurrence. If you'd have been asked this question, you'd will say, oh, it's normal. So, another interesting observation, standing at the supermarket checkout, I came across this one. I thought, I've got to have that. Oxytocin, it mentioned oxytocin and said it's the love hormone. Wow, that's a good one. So, and it's got this nice saying here, can't stop the feeling, oxytocin may be the reason you keep the creep you sleep with. Again, I guess it reflects the bonding effect of oxytocin. So, I don't know if this was also in this article. He picked you up 2 hours late, he made you pay for dinner, you know he's not right for you, but you're crazy about him. What's the story? In a word, oxytocin. So oxytocin is the love hormone. Attached to Mr. Not Quite Right may not be love, it might be pure chemical oxytocin. So the importance here is that oxytocin promotes bonding, it does trigger orgasm, and it's triggered by stimuli, emotional stimuli, and physical stimuli. So physical stimuli, genital tract, or mammary stimulation. So if you look at oxytocin regulation, tactile stimulation of these areas will promote oxytocin release. However, psychogenic or physical stress will reduce oxytocin release, which could mean if you're under stress, you may not, and you're a lactating mother, he may not be able to feed the baby. Now these are all effects in females. What about males? Well, in males, oxytocin is present at the same concentrations as in females and is stimulated by the same stimulation. Genital or mammary stimulation in males will also promote oxytocin release. The actions of oxytocin in males are thought to promote erection. There are some trials going on at the moment with oxytocin to see if it will stimulate erection. And it's also thought from studies in rats that it stimulates the movement of sperm in the testes, because the spermatogenic ducts are surrounded by smooth muscle. So a quick summary of oxytocin. Made, synthesized in the PVN, but released from the posterior pituitary. Main actions in females for lactation, stimulates uterine motility, but it is not obligatory for childbirth. Childbirth will occur in a complete absence of oxytocin. It's just delayed in the absence of oxytocin. When the baby gets big enough, it will actually kick where the uterus, it will start moving around, and that will cause uterine contractions and cause its delivery. So in terms of pathophysiology, no excess syndrome has been described. I guess you can't have too much of a good thing. A deficiency will cause impairment of delivery, as I just mentioned. It could also cause impairment of lactation. This would be serious if you don't have access to formula, but in the Western world, with access to formula, I guess this is just an inconvenience, not a fatal condition. Okay, so we'll continue with another part of the pituitary gland on Wednesday.